Here's our Leafs reporter, Mark Masters. So, Mark, what kind of first impression did Craig Berube make in his first news conference as Leafs head coach?
Well, Glenn, Craig Berube was all business today. Short, concise answers to the questions he was facing. There was one moment where I asked Brendan Shanahan about dropping the gloves with Berube back in their playing days, and he kind of looked over at Berube at one point saying he must have had upwards of 200 fights, and Berube was just kind of, not laughing or anything. He was kind of focused in on the task at hand. So, there's an understated presence to Berube for sure. Brad Treliving was talking about how some of the people he interviewed about Berube mentioned him being quietly brilliant when it comes to the tactical side, and you certainly sense that quiet kind of part in this news conference today. It's going to be a big adjustment for us, Glenn, because Sheldon Keefe gave long, detailed, expansive answers to our questions.
Yeah, and we touched on this on Friday after the hiring was made official, but after watching how the news conference played out on Tuesday, how do you think Berube will handle the market in Toronto?
I think he's going to be fine. I mean, Treliving pointed out that he spent a lot of time in the Philadelphia Flyers organization as an assistant and as a head coach, and that is an organization, a franchise with a rich tradition and history, and they can be pretty hard on their coaches and athletes in Philadelphia, as we know. So I think that experience, of course, will help, and there's nothing like Toronto and the circus kind of feel that comes with this market at times. But I really thought Berube handled things well. When he was asked about the core today and the past failures, he said, no, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the future. I'm worried about what I can do to help this team. So I think ultimately he's going to be okay. I mean, Treliving pointed out this is a guy who stepped on every, step of the ladder in the hockey world as a player, as an assistant coach, a head coach at the AHL level. So he's done it all. I don't think much phases him. I think he'll be fine in Toronto.
Now, another interesting nugget coming out of the availability, Brad Treliving mentioning it will be a very busy offseason for the Leafs. So, Mark, what's next on the to-do list?
So much heavy lifting to be done by Treliving this offseason. Remember, he hasn't been on the job for even a year yet. He was hired at the end of May last year, so he kind of hit the ground running there. He's got a better feel for the organization now. He's got a lot to do. They got their amateur scouting meetings this week, their pro scouting meetings, and then they're going to have to fill out the coaching staff. Berube mentioned that Mike Van Ryan, who was an assistant for him in St. Louis, is also an assistant here, so perhaps he has an inside track to get one of those jobs. But, of course, he might want some other assistants other than the guys who were here last season. So they'll have to fill out the staff. And, of course, roster construction. What is the future hold for Mitch Marner, John Tavares, a couple of guys who are going into the last year of their contracts, eligible for an extension? We know Treliving has said everything is on the table this offseason. He reiterated that today. It's going to be really interesting in the weeks and months ahead here in Toronto.
Got to think if they make a big move, it's going to happen at or closer to the entry draft at the end of June. He's our Leafs reporter, Mark Masters.